Somewhere in your life right now, there is probably someone smiling at you who doesn't mean it. Not a stranger, someone close. And the unsettling part isn't that they dislike you, it's that you'll likely never hear them say it out loud. You'll only feel it, in small moments you keep talking yourself out of. Psychologists have a name for this feeling, the gap between what someone shows you and what they actually carry toward you. Most of us assume hostility looks like shouting, like slammed doors, like obvious conflict. But real, sustained resentment almost never announces itself. It hides, and the people best at hiding it are often the ones standing closest to you. Picture a friend group celebrating someone's promotion. Everyone claps. Someone says, "Wow, I'm so surprised they picked you." It sounds like praise. It isn't. That single sentence does two things at once. It acknowledges the win, while quietly reminding the room that the win was unexpected, undeserved, a fluke. This is passive aggression in its purest form. Hostility wearing the costume of kindness, precise enough to wound, deniable enough to escape blame. If you push back, you're the one who can't take a joke. That deniability isn't an accident. It's the entire design. Researchers who study conflict avoidance describe passive aggression as anger that has nowhere safe to go. The person feels the resentment fully, but expressing it directly feels too risky, to the relationship, to their own self-image as a nice person, or to a power dynamic they don't feel able to challenge. So the anger gets smuggled out sideways, in the backhanded compliment, the pointed silence, the favor mysteriously forgotten, the "just kidding" that arrives one beat too late to soften anything. The pattern is consistent enough that therapists can predict it almost like a script. And once you learn to recognize the script, you start seeing it everywhere. Here's something psychologists have shown again and again. Envy doesn't distribute evenly across the people we know. We don't envy strangers on the other side of the world doing better than us. We envy the people closest to our own position, the coworker one rung up, the friend whose life looks like a slightly better edited version of ours. Social psychologist Susan Fiske has spent decades studying how we emotionally react to other people based on how we perceive their status and their intentions toward us. Her research on social comparison found something uncomfortable. We tend to feel warmth toward people who seem lower in status and no threat to us, but envy, sometimes laced with a private wish to see them fail, toward people who are similar to us but doing better. This is why the sharpest hidden resentment rarely comes from rivals far away. It comes from the friend in the same field, the sibling on a similar path, the classmate at the same reunion. Proximity is what turns admiration into ache, and ache, left uncomfortable and unspoken, calcifies into something closer to quiet hostility, dressed up, of course, as support. Not all hidden dislike comes from garden variety envy. Sometimes it's structural, built into how a person relates to everyone around them. Psychologists distinguish between grandiose narcissism, the loud, obvious, chest-puffing version most people picture, and covert narcissism, quieter, more wounded-looking, but running on the same underlying need, to be the center of every story, and to experience anyone else's success as a small personal injury. A covert narcissist rarely says, "I hate that you're doing well." Instead, you get the sudden coldness after your good news, the conversation that somehow redirects to their own struggles within 30 seconds of you sharing yours. The friendship that only feels warm when you are beneath them in some way, and quietly strained the moment you're not. Here's the then settling part researchers keep finding. People with strong narcissistic traits are often skilled at appearing warm on first impression. Studies on the perception of narcissists in early acquaintance show they're frequently rated as more likable, more competent, even more attractive in the first few encounters, a phenomenon researchers have called the narcissist's charm offensive. The mask isn't a failure of social skill, it's the social skill, deployed strategically, and it tends to crack only after enough time has passed for real stakes to enter the relationship. There's a stranger twist in all of this, cases where the person doesn't even fully know they resent you. Psychological projection, a concept dating back to early psychoanalysis and still supported in modern research on defense mechanisms, describes how people unconsciously push their own unacceptable feelings onto someone else, rather than face those feelings directly. Someone who feels quietly threatened by you might start insisting you're the one who's competitive. Someone harboring jealousy might accuse you, unprompted, of being jealous of them. It sounds almost absurd until you're standing inside it, being blamed for the exact emotion the other person is actually feeling. Modern research on defense mechanisms suggests projection often intensifies under stress, when a person's self-image feels too fragile to absorb an uncomfortable truth about themselves. Rather than think, "I resent this person," the mind performs a quiet substitution. This person is the problem. It's not always calculated. Sometimes it's the mind's way of protecting itself from a truth it isn't ready to hold. Occasionally, hidden resentment stops staying hidden, and when it's confronted, something predictable happens. Psychologist Jennifer Freud, who has studied this pattern for decades, named it DARVO: deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. It works almost like clockwork. You raise a concern, gently, calmly, with evidence. The response isn't an apology. It's denial that anything happened at all. Then,
attack. Your character, your memory, your motives get put on trial instead of the original issue. And finally, the reversal. Somehow, by the end of the conversation, you're the one who owes an apology, and they've become the wounded party. What makes DARVO so effective isn't cruelty alone, it's confusion. Research on this pattern shows it reliably shifts observers' sympathy toward the person using it, and it reliably leaves the original speaker doubting their own read of reality. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling strangely guilty for bringing something up in the first place, you may have witnessed this pattern in real time. All of this leads to a harder question. Why would someone stay close to a person they secretly resent rather than simply walking away? Sociologist Irving Goffman described social life as a kind of ongoing performance. We all present a managed version of ourselves depending on the audience. Most of the time, this is harmless, even necessary. But for some relationships, the performance becomes the entire relationship. The friendship persists not because of genuine warmth, but because of what it provides: access, status, an audience, a source of comparison to feel superior to, or simply the social cost of admitting the friendship never worked. This is the quiet architecture of a fake friendship: warmth on the surface, transaction underneath. And because the surface is maintained so carefully, the person on the receiving end often has no evidence to point to, just a feeling, a pattern of tiny inconsistencies between what's said and what's done. Here's the practical shift. Stop hunting for the one dramatic moment that proves resentment and start noticing patterns instead. Hidden hostility rarely reveals itself in a single scene. It reveals itself across dozens of small ones. The compliment with a hook in it, the silence after your win, the conversation that somehow always circles back to them, the accusation that
fits their behavior better than yours. You don't need a confession to trust the pattern, and you're allowed to quietly adjust how much of yourself you offer someone, even without ever saying the word resentment out loud. Maybe the most unsettling truth in all of this isn't that some people secretly resent you. It's that you were never actually meant to find out. And the moment you finally notice the pattern is the moment they lose the only tool that ever worked on you: your doubt.